Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special episode of Breaking News Bears. We are back for a trade deadline episode. We have to get through a lot of information today. And I'll tell you who I'm joined by, Evan Davis, or so you might know him as the DSN insider, Evan Davis. I might have to throw it on his little tag right below his icon there because, man, that guy, he nailed a couple. If you've been following his articles on Dynasty Sports Network, first of all, you can find them all on the website. And second of all, he hasn't missed on too many of them. He predicted that Josh Hader was going to get dealt from Milwaukee, and he predicted that Juan Soto was going to land up in San Diego. And lo and behold, they both come to fruition. So Evan Davis, tip my cap to you, my good sir. I'm sure there's more in the making in the near future, but and the guy who's right below me as well, I got to give a bit introduction to him. Mateo Ruiz, he's back with us, and we're going to be talking about all things trade deadline. And we got some Padres to talk to because, hey, they took over the trade deadline. We got some Yankees, some Minnesota Twins, and of course, ended off on some Toronto talk, those Bluebirds and who they added. Did they add in the right places? And the guys that they added as well, and that they will be playing in Toronto. That's a big, interesting storyline I did not expect to unpack, but hey, we'll be doing it today. Guys, let's get into the biggest storyline, the headliner of the day. Juan Soto, one big trade. That's what I named your article, Evan, and that's what we saw unfold yesterday. It is not common in any sports that we see a team just single-handedly dominate a trade deadline like the San Diego Padres did yesterday. 3 major acquisitions. I could be even wrong in that. Those are just the major ones. Josh Bell, Juan Soto, and the guy who I think even got lost in the mix, Josh Hader. This guy I want to save some time to talk to because I'm absolutely in love with the stuff he has. I think he's going to be a real good player for the Padres. I think he's going to be a good player regardless of where he went, but now he is on the Friars, and God, that team added a lot of stuff. They bolstered a lot of positions, and they are ready to not just take the National League if they'd like to, but they got their eyes set on a world championship that might be looming and coming once more to Southern California. Guys, did we just witness the biggest trade in Major League history? Mateo, I'm going to start off with you. What do you make of the blockbuster deal? Can you give me a side of what do you think's coming the other way for the Nats? Is it some good haul for them? Could they have gotten more young prospects if they shopped some elsewhere locations across the MLB? What were your thoughts on the deal? And is it the biggest one we've seen in quite some time? Because I'm looking back in Miguel Cabrera days. I've heard a lot of comparisons from there where they traded him when he had a couple of years of eligibility left on his contract and they got a decent haul. But like, what are your thoughts, man? I don't think I've seen something like this in a while.
Yeah, I mean, this Juan Soto trade is really like unprecedented. It's not anything we've seen before. I believe, if I'm remembering the stat correctly, at 23 years old, he's the youngest like multiple time all-star player to get traded mid-season. Wow. So this is a complete new sort of breaking ground for the MLB here. And I said it to Evan in a text message when the trade happened, and I'll say it again here. The Padres gave up not nearly enough to get a player of the value of Juan Soto. I mean, CJ Abrams is a fantastic player. He's a fantastic prospect. The rest of the guys that they got in that bunch are going to be really good, really solid players. They're bona fide blue chippers, but I still don't think they got, the Nationals got enough in return for Juan Soto. And I think there's not many teams that could have put together a better prospect offering. I mean, the only way to really do that would be to increase the number of prospects you'd give. And, a team like the Dodgers might have had a little bit more to give, but are you willing to part with that much minor league talent for the cost of Juan Soto, who, we know he's rejected large contracts before, large long-term extensions before. So who knows where he lies in that? There's a lot of uncertainty there, but the value that the Padres got him at is ridiculous to compared to some of the trades that we've seen at past deadlines. I mean, I'm thinking back to the Jose Barrios trade that the Jays pulled off with, giving up 2 of their top prospects and getting a guy like Barrios, who was a very good player, but nowhere near what Juan Soto is. And I'm looking at the return that the Washington Nationals got back for Juan Soto, and they're comparable packages. And I don't think that makes sense for Juan Soto's value. I think it just might have been a factor of the fact that there weren't many people in on it because the price was so high, and the Nationals were kind of cornered because Juan Soto wasn't signing another deal there, no matter how much money they threw at him. So it's definitely the biggest trade we've ever seen because of the headliner in it. But I don't think the value was nearly enough there that Washington brought back in. I'm pretty disappointed with the prospect haul they actually got back.
And I mean, it was about the quantity of prospects, I guess you could say, that the Nationals got back rather than the quality of prospects. And you see that a lot in baseball. I just never seen it. And you mentioned how unprecedented it is. Such a headline name, a generational talent like Juan Soto. That's Evan, if you want to compare it to hockey, and a lot of our viewers kind of understand it on a hockey scale too, that's like somewhat a Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews getting traded, not signed or anywhere else, traded, and you're getting just first round picks and fringy first round players that were selected within the first rounds of the draft. Like it's nothing crazy. You need to get a lot more. You need to get a lot more that's going to help you win. Did you see and take a look at the Washington Nationals team right now? Granted, they're in
Oh
a
yeah.
rebuild
Oh
and
yeah.
it's the start of a rebuild. They're scraping everything down, but
I
man,
think
it's
after
ugly.
that trade, I said it to Evan because we were trying to figure out what exactly the package was coming back and, texting back and forth and stuff. And we thought maybe Cronenworth was involved in it. We had heard a little bit of that,
You
which
got to
might
get
have sweetened the
something that's going
deal.
to help a
You
little
got
bit.
a little bit that's going to help you right now, but still a young player that's going to be there in the future for you. And we kept looking and the guys, it wasn't coming. That was the
Oh,
package. CJ Abrams and the other three, it wasn't coming. It wasn't coming. And it felt like the Nationals set themselves back 2 extra years from where they needed to be after this trade. You trade a guy like Juan Soto, you expect to
speed up the
jumpstart
process
that
a bit.
rebuild and
Yeah.
get it started now. Especially you're trading a 23-year-old multiple-time All-Star. You're not going to get young players that are much better than that to begin with. So you're expecting quantity back, you're expecting quality back, and they got neither. They got a few solid, very good prospects that, in all honesty, are very well going to pan out. But they also traded a 23-year-old All-Star who's going to be one of the best players in baseball in the next couple of years. So who knows what you're going to expect, right?
Who knows, man? I don't think it's going to be looking very nice on the national side of things, but I want to turn over to Evan and seeing your side of things here. Listen, Mateo was talking about the Hall going back. I want to ask you about the whole trade in general, but also in the regards to what came in on the deadline day. There was a couple of names that I mentioned off the top, Josh Bell and Bell and Hader, to name a few. And do you think those are the right pieces that are coming back to help the Padres win, or do they just go out, spend mommy's gift card, and say, I'm going to buy as many pieces or get as many pieces as I'd like? So what are your thoughts on the Soto deal? And were these the right moves made by the Padres that's going to set them up this year, next year? And I know Soto's got a couple years left for him to give some worth to this Padres team, but do they set themselves up nicely for the years to come and compete?
I don't think so. Like I'm thinking, and I mean this might sound crazy, but I'm thinking in like 3 years from now, or even in 2, 3 years from now, like they're going to be the Angels of the NL West. Like they have no pitching. Like I mean, besides Joe Musgrove, you look at the other four guys. Like it's nothing that's going to win you a playoff series, or even let alone like the World Series. Like you have Joe Musgrove, who's been phenomenal, definitely a candidate for the Cy Young. But I mean, other than that, Hugh Darvish is, he's okay. I mean, Blake Snell has been rancid ever since he came over to San Diego. Mike Clevenger, Tommy John, and then Sean Manaea hasn't been that great, and he's a free agent at the end of this year. I don't know, like, and you gave up so many prospects. I mean, even the Brandon Drury trade, I don't understand why you would do that and give up your eighth best prospect when he's going to be a free agent after this year, and you already had Cronenworth. Like, I felt like it was kind of like a high that they were on. And they're also 11 and a half games back of the Dodgers right now. So I mean, like, they're fighting for a wild card spot.
They're
And
not even hosting a playoff game right
yeah,
now, and they made all these moves.
I don't get the thought process of the Padres GM, because I mean, maybe I'll flip the question to you guys. Next season, when it's a full year of Padres and Dodgers, do you honestly think the Padres are going to win the division
I don't
the
think so.
way
No,
that the team,
no.
I think
like,
LA is way
they're
too deep. That's the difference
Yeah.
between those
like,
two teams. LA is established. San Diego is trying to establish themselves off of just bringing guys whoever are available. They're not establishing the right way. And you go look at the prospects. I know we were talking about this before the show, Evan, but like they don't got any remaining. That's all the
like they
guns bolts that in their chamber. That's what's so concerning about me. They're really taking a risk with the guys they're
I,
bringing in.
can I just
Yeah, go on.
I think they shot themselves in the foot. Like
A little
they
bit.
have zero help. Like if Fernando Tatis, I mean, God forbid I want to see him playing, but if you had CJ Abrams as a backup plan, if Tatis gets hurt, who's playing shortstop? Like if
Is Ha-Sung
Juan
Kim still
Soto,
there?
but like, and I mean, ever since Machado came back from injury, I saw like he's batting like I think a little over 200. So, you know, God, like hopefully he gets back. But like, I don't know. I don't understand. I think the Padres kind of, if it wasn't going to make them better, I don't see the point of shipping off all of your prospects to continually fight for a wild card team. I don't know. And I was telling Mario before the show, like all of their starting pitchers besides Musgrove are free agents after 2024. So like the chances of you even re-signing them, all of them, and do you even want to? Like, and they don't have any money because you're gonna have to pay Soto 500 million. You've Tatis at 340, so that's almost $1 billion in two players. They don't average enough fans to go over the luxury tax by that much. I mean, I saw they average 38,000 fans at home. Like you can't afford to go over the luxury tax that much. I think they're screwed.
Well, then what made the managerial group for the Padres think that it's like, what made them think it's win now mode? Like, why couldn't this have happened next year, the year after, when you can establish yourself a little bit more? Because, okay, I think the Padres would make the playoffs this year, regardless if they made these moves or not. I had a feeling that they're going to latch onto a wild card spot. See how those go. Maybe you get some magic happening in the postseason. You can see that with the group you have and the players that you have available to you right now, you can go a little bit further in the postseason than you thought you would have been able to a year from now. I'm just a little unsure what made the decision, let's go out and get everything, when you're not even leading the division. Like you mentioned, Mateo, they can't even host a playoff game, and you're fighting for a wild card spot. Like, I don't know. Is it just because they had a bunch of players available at the time that they had to go out and get them? Maybe they thought this is not going to be a free agent class of these assets next year. Like, what were the thought process behind let's go out and get all these guys now rather than wait it out a little bit? That's what I'm a little concerned about, because I really didn't expect the Padres to be huge contenders. Obviously, they make moves every single year. I remember the Scherzer one and the Trey Turner one somewhat coming to fruition, almost happened this year once more. But I didn't expect these guys to make these kind of moves, substantial moves. Like, why make these moves, Mateo? Like, what are your thoughts there?
That's just kind of how AJ Preller's always run the team ever since it feels like the Machado trade, right? Or actually, was Machado a signing or a trade? He was a signing, right?
He was a signing. Regardless, they're throwing him a ton of money.
Regardless, threw him a ton of money. There was the Blake Snell thing, then Clevenger, and even Nola, they gave up a lot to get him too, right? It's the way the Padres have run this team has been like the 1970 Yankees, where it's like, we don't really need a farm system. We'll just throw our prospects year after year after year, and we'll try to build contenders. And it worked for the Yankees for a little bit. And then the 80s came around, and the Yankees were like, oh crap, we don't have a farm system. And we're just trotting out Don Mattingly and a bunch of people that are, aged has-beens, because we totally screwed ourselves for the last 10 years. So if it works and the Padres get a World Series out of it, he'll look great. AJ Preller will be the savior of San Diego. He'll have brought a championship back there. If it doesn't work, the Padres aren't going to be competitive when they lose this core for another 10, 15 years. The only comforting thing that I see about the Juan Soto trade that I think made them more willing to make the move, and the thing that I don't think people are talking about enough, is the fact that Juan Soto is still 23. Juan Soto is younger than some of the prospects that you would have had to give up to acquire him, right? And he's already arguably a top 5 player in baseball, not having the greatest season this year, but obviously heating up just before the All-Star break, and now coming out of it on a new team in a new situation. You're going to get Juan Soto, he's going to be fantastic, and he's 23 years old, and he's only getting better. And you have another 17 years of this if you can lock him up for that long. So, I mean, that's the one thing that makes you a little more at ease when you trade for Juan Soto, especially at the price that you got him. And why not go in when you have a young core like Tatis and him, right? Why sit around and wait for Machado to get older, for your pitchers to become free agents? Why isn't this the year to go in? It might be, but if it doesn't work, you're going to pay the price for a very long time.
Yeah, it's a pretty other ugly side of the coin. And if you're the San Diego Padres faithful, you don't want to see that for quite a long time. But they got the pieces in right now. We talked about Juan Soto. He was the meat and potatoes of all of deadline day yesterday. I want to talk about this one guy, Josh Hader. This guy has electric stuff. If you don't know it, he is one of the best closing pitchers of his generation, I would say. He's got a lot of high praise. I want to get your thoughts, Evan, because obviously you mentioned that he was going to get traded, and lo and behold, it comes and happens. He went to the Padres, your bitter rivals. He's probably going to be closing out some games against your team because he's just probably that good. But no, what do you make of Josh Hader coming to San Diego? Is he going to slot in really nicely? I don't think he's got any competition around him, considering they traded their other closer the other way. But what were your thoughts on the deal, and how is this going to help them? I think big picture, postseason. If there's one guy I want in a ninth inning, it's Josh Hader. And I think they were thinking the exact same thing when they went out to go acquire him. So what are your thoughts on the deal? And what do you think he can bring to the team? Because they haven't really had a solidified closer since, I don't even know if we consider Melanson that much of a solidified closer, but He's fringy. He's there, but Josh Hader brings something that they haven't had in quite some time. What do you make of it? I want to hear your thoughts on Josh.
All right. Well, I mean, first the rivalry. Dodgers are 13-2 in the last 15 against San
Okay.
Diego, so not much of a rivalry there. But I don't know, like Josh Hader. I mean, there's a reason why the Brewers traded him, and it's what I had said that you can trade him and you still keep Devin Williams. Like
Right.
Josh Hader, I think since like the month of June has been one of the worst closers in the MLB in terms of ERA. And I mean, Rogers wasn't that much better in terms of ERA. I think they were both almost in the fives. But I mean, Hader, if when he's on, he's on. The issue
Absolutely.
is the last 2 months he hasn't been on. So I mean, I don't know. And in the postseason, I mean, I don't know because I can't remember the last time we saw the Padres really in the postseason. I know they were like 2020, the shortened season, but I mean, I don't know. I just think they gave up a lot, and I don't know if it's like just the pressure of always being the second place in the NL West, or at least always like knocking on the door. But I just feel like they gave up way too much for a guy that hasn't really been it since midway through the first half of the, or like, yeah, midway through the first half of the season, heading towards the All Star break. But I mean, I don't know. I just I feel like the Padres are. I mean, like they'll do whatever. Hater's great, but he hasn't been it so far. But when he's on, I mean, he, he's disgusting when he's on.
It's the ceiling you're looking for, right? Because Josh
Yeah,
Hader, you throw him, you could throw him into some of the best closers when he's on because you look at the stuff he has, how he mixes his pitches. He can do just about anything with any batter in the league. And I think that's a really valuable skill with the aspirations that the Padres have. Listen, they don't just acquire all these guys, say, okay, we're just going to try and get the NL West and regular season wins. You're going out for a championship. And who do you want on the bump in a championship game? Well, you got some decent starting pitching to get you there. And I mean, you could talk all you want about maybe not going out and getting another starting arm, but you have that bullpen piece that is extremely reliable when the pressure's on. I know he hasn't shown it so much this year, but if you're going to tell me a Josh Hader is going to be a lot better in the postseason rather than the regular season, I think me and the Padres will take that just about every day. Mateo, I'm going to turn it over to you before we head over to the Yankee side of things, the American League side of things. But what'd you make of Josh Hader coming? What can he bring to the Padres? And what do you see coming from this team going forward after all these acquisitions? Do you think they're going to cut down that lead in the NL West? Personally, I don't think so. We don't see the Dodgers choke this up very often. But do you see them getting a lot more wins and losses? Are they going to be one of the hottest teams in baseball over the second half of the year with Josh Hader?
Definitely much needed for the Padres. Also much needed for Josh Hader. I think a scenery change was definitely, definitely in the cards for him there. I think it's definitely going to help him a lot. I feel like having Devin Williams behind him and sort of that push and pull of who's the closer. Devin Williams hasn't given up a run since like May, and it's rightfully his spot, but Josh Hader has the better pedigree. And so you've got a little bit of a challenging thing there. Who gets the eighth, who gets the ninth? Do they do it righty lefty, or do you go to a guy like Devin Williams who's been absolutely shut down? But I think what it comes down to most for the reason of the trade is it comes back to Milwaukee. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet that the Brewers put out right after the trade, but it was really strange. I've never seen a team do this afterward. But Milwaukee basically puts out this press release that says, we're sorry, fans. It's tough to trade good players on good teams, but this is our best shot of being competitive and getting, I think, as many bites of the apple as we can, is what they said, right? Because from Milwaukee's perspective, you are a smaller market. Even within your division, you're not competing with St. Louis. You're not competing with Chicago for the size of your market. And Milwaukee has managed to sustain a competitive team for a very long time. And to do that in baseball as a small market team, you have to make tough decisions. And Milwaukee got a pretty good package back for Josh Hader. They got a little bit of major league talent. They got a little bit of prospects in return. And those players are what's going to propel them from, maybe a 3-year window to a 5-year window. And sure, it hurts the overall quality of this current team, but it makes them competitive for much longer. And I think it's unfortunate that Milwaukee had to make a decision like that, because you want to see the best players playing together. You want to see the best teams possible matching up in the playoffs. You want to see Josh Hader on a competitive team. He is on a competitive team, but you'd like to see him on a competitive Brewers team if that's the reason they traded him. And I think that's really it. The Padres mortgaged their future because they want to go all in right now. And that's why they went for Josh Hader. And the Brewers were in the opposite situation. They said, you know what? It's a numbers game. If we can get in the playoffs 5 more times with this core, we have better odds of winning the World Series than getting in 3 more times with Josh Hader in our pen. And I think having Devin Williams behind him there makes that decision all the much easier. Trade him, you've got your closer defined, and you fill in the gaps, and you're successful for maybe a few more years with the haul you get in return.
And I mean, you look at the parameters too, the National League Central, a lot of the teams there, I think 3 of the 5 teams are in the rebuilding stage, and the early ones to boot. You look at the Pirates, who I actually found this quite funny. They actually gave away money at the deadline to the Toronto Blue Jays.
Really?
A team that struggles to get money, they gave away some money. So interesting how that works out. You got the Reds, who are just trying to blow everything out, scorched earth tactics there. In Chicago, they're kickstarting a rebuild as well. You only got St. Louis left to compete with. So I think that's the perfect mix. If you want to extend that window, go all for it, because within those years, it's going to still be a close race in the Central, but you're going to have the younger pieces to get you over the hump. So interesting to see the Milwaukee side of things. And we've talked very thoroughly on the San Diego side. Now we're going to be switching gears, switching leagues, the American League, and the guys who have been doing it all the best this year, the New York Yankees. They just continue to add some pieces. Team that already had World Series aspirations and a really good chance of taking home a World Series a week ago. Well, they added a bunch of people and a bunch of individuals, including the pitching, that can maybe get them over the hump and kind of solidified those odds as well. Again, it wasn't about what they did in the regular season. It was about what they get done in the postseason. Those guys who have not been able to get it done for quite some time, well, they're going to have a shot at redemption in October. And I think they might have gotten it right with these guys here. They lose Jordan Montgomery. That is a very high caliber pitcher that is going away. But you pick up guys like Frankie Montas, debatably one of the best arms on the market, Louis Trevino, Harrison Bader, who obviously is not a pitcher, and a couple of formative bullpen arms as well. Did the Yankees do enough to put them over the top? Evan, I'm going to ask you, then I'm going to switch it over to Mateo. Would you have liked to see them get a little more aggressive and take a bigger fish? Maybe Juan Soto. I know they were kicking tires on that guy, but I guess things fell through. Did you want to see them go out and get some bigger names? I know Frankie Montas is a big name, but what are your thoughts on their approach to the trade deadline, and how do you see it playing out? Are they that team to beat in the American League, and even that team to beat in the major leagues?
Well, I'm good if they want to not get everyone. If they don't want to get everyone.
On this side of the tracks, we say that about your blue and white team.
It doesn't feel good when you're on the other side of the tracks. Now I realize what it's like. I mean, I get all the notifications. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what else? And the fact that they did not give up Volpe or Dominguez is what shocked me. I was like for Montas, how was not one of them included? You want to talk about a team not getting enough in return? I thought the A's kind of didn't get enough in return for Montas. How do you not tackle one of the top 5 prospects in the Yankees system? But I mean, you knew when Benintendi got traded there, you knew that Gallo his foot was already out the door. I think they kind of slammed the door shut when Benintendi got there. I looked up this Trevino guy. I mean, I'm not a stats guy like Mateo is, but I mean, apparently just his numbers are kind of skewed just based on the defense that was provided behind him in Oakland. So I guess his numbers are actually a lot better than, what we see suggests. And I mean, they're really good. They're really good. I mean, there's a reason why I think they have the second best record in baseball right now. I mean, it's going to be a dogfight to get to the World Series. It would be pretty cool if it was Yankees and Dodgers. I think that would be pretty cool. But I mean, they did a lot to get there. It wouldn't I didn't understand the whole Juan Soto thing, because it's where would you put him? I don't know. I don't know where you would. I mean, unless you're presuming Aaron Judge is leaving, which, God, they're probably shooting themselves in the foot every time that guy hits a home run, because that's just another zero.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point he should get 20% ownership of the team and the key to the city. But they're really good. I mean, Benintendi was a huge pickup. Montas, they were saying, a lot of guys were saying they need started pitching, and I mean that's what they got, and they're loaded. They're loading up for a playoff run.
Yeah, they bolstered just about every position, and the arms is the one I really want to focus on, Mateo. What did you think of the pitching that they added to their team? They've been struggling a little bit on the pitching side of things, 1 through 5. They haven't always been able to get it done, but again, a first team to 70 wins. They got a team rolling. They got some guys they could throw out there in a playoff series and get stuff done. Are the pitching arms that they brought in enough to get them over the line in the postseason? That's the big question mark for this team. It's nothing to do with the regular season. They could lose every other game for all I care and just get into the postseason. That's all the eyes that everyone's going to be on. And that's when all the criticism is going to come their way. Why didn't you make this move? Why didn't you make this move? But the moves that they did make right now, are you satisfied with the pitching arms that they brought in?
Yeah, Evan actually hinted about the guy that I wanted to talk about. I think Frankie Montes was an ad that, much needed, but Lou Trevino was a guy that, is seriously flying under the radar at the deadline over here. And it's because of that big fat 6.34 ERA that he's carrying into New York with him right now. Last year, he put up a 3.18 and he's been in that range for a while. 2019 was a little rough for him, but still, he's been in that range for a while. We know what kind of a pitcher Lou Trevino is, and he has a track record. And the interesting thing there is, I believe the stat that Evan was referring to was his FIP.
Yeah.
Which is, very much in line with what we've seen the last 2 years, where Trevino has been a very quality right-handed arm out of the bullpen. But a guy like Lou Trevino, who, for people who don't know, FIP is basically, it's a stat that mimics ERA, but it's essentially for the 3 true outcomes, which are walks, strikeouts, and home runs. So if you're only giving up walks, strikeouts, and home runs, what is your ERA? Taking the defenders completely out of the equation, taking batted balls completely out of the equation, that's the stat. And it's adjusted to the major league average ERA, so it's actually comparable. This year, going into his time with New York, his FIP is 3.76. Last year, when he put up a 3.18 ERA with Oakland, his FIP was 3.78. So if you take out all the batted balls, all the balls in play, he's the same pitcher that he was last year statistically. He's the exact same amount of run prevention that he's providing. And it's no secret that Oakland's defense has been absolutely terrible this year. It's no secret that they're trotting out a new player at every position, every single game, because they can't find somebody to stick because they don't have any talent in their system right now. And Trevino has definitely felt that. And, late in games when you're down, defenders start caring less. They don't really dive for balls. They don't really go and they give that extra effort to make that play. And you're going to see much better defenders in New York. You're obviously going to have to contend with a bit of a smaller park, but I mean, Trevino's definitely got the pitch mix to be able to handle Yankee Stadium. I think he can definitely get the ground balls that he's needed, and you'll have the defenders behind him now to actually field the ground balls and save him some runs. So he doesn't have probably the most inflated ERA of his entire career. Montes was a great pickup. I mean, the Yankees definitely needed another starting pitcher. Bader is a bit of a nothing grab for me. I mean, he's a good fielder, but nothing really more than that. I don't really see him.
Now?
Yeah.
Like they're saying that he's out till like September. I'm like, what?
So he might end up just being your Terrence Gore off the bench in the playoffs. But, I don't really know what they're expecting from Bader. I thought that trade was a little out of place. Frankie Montes definitely needed to happen, but I think Lou Trevino is the real star flying under the radar here. I think he's going to turn it on for the Yankees and have a great second half.
And heavily slept on too. So he's going to have to probably step up for Jordan Montgomery, who's left the Yankees. That's a big hole that they got to fill. But if Louis Trevino is all that you guys say he is, and I know a lot of people are rumoring that as well about those advanced stats and what he can bring to the table, you're going to really need that to fill that void that Jordan Montgomery has left, because he was actually having a pretty decent season as well. He was a guy that the Yankees could turn to in many cases and get them over the line. Now you have a guy and you got to turn it over to Louis Trevino to see what he can bring. So some big moves from the Yankees. Again, they didn't have to make any moves if they wanted to still remain World Series contenders. But hey, you're just putting some caramel on the whipped cream and the chocolate ice cream. So they're going crazy. They got the money to do it. They got the assets. They can do just about anything. All they got to do left is win some playoff games. So we'll cross that bridge when we get down there. And we were talking pitching with the Yankees. Let's talk about pitching with these guys. The Minnesota Twins, they added a lot of arms. And before I get into anything of who they added, I think we owe them a bit of an apology. If you guys are fans of the show and you've been watching us since day one, well, I think this was day 2 of our show when we were predicting the American League Central. And man, it got pretty ugly when we got to the Twins. They did not have a lot of guys heading into the season, not a lot of formidable arms. And lo and behold, they're first place in the American League Central. And the thing that they're adding and bolstering, hence the word bolstering, is the arms. They have gotten this far, and they're trying to make a big turn around the corner to get to their playoff aspirations that they so happen to have now. We did not have any playoff aspirations for this team. We went the way of the majority into the Chicago White Sox might take that division with ease. No, it's not an easy division. Everything's tight. And, well, it looked like the Minnesota Twins were the busiest team of the bunch. So, Twins, we're sorry. We didn't mean it. I think you guys took it personally and went out and rapidly got a bunch of arms. But hey, I guess it's a good decision for you guys, because you guys are going to be looking like a much better team compared to your other divisional counterparts. But the Twins, they go out and get a string of arms headlined by Tyler Mahle. If you don't know, Tyler Mahle is a fly ball guy. He's a contact pitcher. And this is going to help very much because the Twins, if you do not know, rank in the lower third of the MLB's home run. They suffer mightily on the long ball. They give up a lot of homers, and you're hoping that a guy who doesn't give up a lot of homers on the road, because, hey, we all know Citizens or American, whatever it's called. I've been to the ballpark, which is kind of sad that I don't know Cincinnati Reds ballpark, but
That's Great American.
Great American.
Yeah, it's Great American.
There we go.
Yeah.
Great American. And it's great for home runs too. It's a launching pad for hitters. So it's nice to see Tyler Mahle get out of there. And I think he's going to do quite well in Minnesota. But they also get Michael Fulmer, who I was talking about at the beginning of the year as a big innings muncher guy who's going to be very enticing for some teams at the deadline, because I knew from the start the Detroit Tigers were going to try to move away from him. Well, lo and behold, they do. And he's heading to a divisional counterpart in the Twins. And George Lopez are the two arms that joined Mahle at the deadline. Both will bring an innings muncher, like I mentioned, and a mentality to the Twins pitching staff that I think is really in need. They're going to need a guy who's been an all-star. They're going to need some real headline names like Mahle and like George Lopez, who was named an all-star this season. There's a lot of good moves from the Twins aspects, and I think they're an underrated team from the deadline who was very successful in the American League. Now, the Central, it looks like it's going to be down to the last game this year. It's so tight. All the teams are not playing the best baseball, but they're picking up enough wins to stay aligned with each other. It's a pretty ugly division. It's been an ugly division for quite some time. It's right. It's either a team running away with it or really tight where just about anything can happen. And this year we're getting the latter. So how crucial were these moves in separating the Twins from the rest of the field? Evan, I'll turn it over to you. Does this put this Twins team? I know I just talked about the Yankees going over the top, but let's kind of put over the top on a lower parameter here. Over the top, as in the Central. Is this the team to beat now with the moves that they just made?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're lucky that they're in the worst division in all of baseball, where a team that's just swimming above 500 is still good enough to be 2 games back of the division, which is just baffling to me. But I mean, they're looking pretty good now. I mean, that bullpen with Michael Fulmer and Jorge Lopez is definitely a nice 1-2 punch to have. Tyler Mahle is a nice pickup to have as like a number 2 starter. And I mean, they're lucky enough that they're in a really bad division where it allows them to, like, quote unquote, run away with it. But I mean, they're going to get swept by any team that they play in the playoffs. So I don't really know if it helps. Like, it helps in the sense that, like, they'll have a division banner, but I think this is just going to be like the White Sox saga from years, where just like the Astros or whoever just smokes them like salmon in the playoffs, and then you're like, wow, what happened to the White Sox? It's just because they're in a horrible division playing against teams that are all in rebuild mode except for like 2 of them, and they're just lucky enough that a division winner happens to go to the playoffs. But I mean, they can make some noise, but I'm not even picking them to win the division series. I don't even care who they play against.
Well, I mean, from the start of the year, we didn't have them at all in the postseason picture, and lo and behold, they're here. They are ready to compete. Yeah, they're going to get in there. It doesn't know.
And
it doesn't know
they're gonna be the 3rd division winner, eh? So they're gonna have to play a wild card team too.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of being in a lower division.
Mm-hmm.
Mateo, do you want to speak to the divisional race between I guess it's a 3-headed race between the White Sox, the Guardians, and the Minnesota Twins? And for a small market team, a team like the Minnesota Twins, where they're kind of in the middle, I wouldn't say a small market, more of a mid-market team. Yeah. Would you consider this deadline to be a success?
I actually think it's the perfect deadline. This is the exact deadline that I wanted the Blue Jays to have, actually. I think Tyler Mahle was probably the most affordable pitcher in the starting pitcher market when you consider the quality that he's going to give you. I mean, he's gone a little bit under the radar in Cincinnati, and they were talking about the other guys that got traded at the deadline a little bit more than Mahle, and I feel like he kind of slid in there under the radar, and you gave up a little bit less than you would have had to give for a pitcher of his pedigree on a more competitive team. And I think Jorge Lopez and Michael Fulmer, Lopez was the closer for the Orioles, but I think they both have closer level stuff. I mean, they may not be the closer on this Minnesota Twins team when the whole bullpen shakes out and everything, but that's 2 arms that you've added to your team that have really good back end of the bullpen, really quality pitches that get outs and get a lot of them. And, Fulmer has a little more length in his game. Lopez is a little more put him in for an inning and shut him down kind of deal. But they got 3 really quality pitchers and addressed a need that they absolutely needed to at the beginning of the year. I think, honestly, the Twins, barring the Padres and the talent that they brought in, had one of the best deadlines in Major League Baseball this year. And I think it's definitely going to separate them from the rest of the pack and propel them into the playoffs.
Yeah, and a quiet deadline from the rest of the teams in the American
Mm-hmm.
League Central. I was very surprised. If you see the team that is supposedly leading it and supposedly going after it, you see them making moves, you're going to want to respond with those and with some corresponding moves.
Yeah.
Nothing but the case. So interesting how that's going to play out. I'm sure we're going to be getting a lot of news down the road as to what these teams are going to be doing against each other, who's going to be getting that last playoff spot in the division, and who are they going to be playing. It's about time now in the major leagues where the playoff picture starts to get forming, and it's going to be interesting which central team goes forward. Maybe it's not going to be the Twins who are making all these moves. Maybe it's going to be another team that gets hot at the right time. Who knows? That's the beauty about playing at 500 baseball in a league, in a division like the American League Central. But we're going to work our way to the hometown team, the Toronto Blue Jays, singing the wrong words, addressing the wrong needs in my mind. Hey, well, they addressed the pitching need. All right. They got Anthony Bass and Zach Pop. But Mateo, I'm going to kick this one off the bat here. Were they the right additions? Is it enough? Because I see a lot of Blue Jays fans that I've been talking to, again, living in Toronto, a lot of my friends and my close friends are Blue Jays fans, and they're giving me all the information like, well, why? Why do we have to get these guys? Why couldn't we get more? And that's what sort of the mindset where I'm at right now. The Jays fans want more, and they just have a lot of questions for Ross Atkins and Shapiro, who have yet to give any kind of reason why they didn't get more. Do you know why they didn't get more? Because they were in on a lot of guys. I know Iglesias of the Angels was a closer they were looking at. Syndergaard was also a guy who went to my Phillies, but that was another name in the rumor mix. So what did you make of why they didn't go off to some bigger names? Or are you satisfied with these guys? And is it enough to get these guys over the hump?
About 2 days before the trade deadline, I don't remember if it was Shapiro or Atkins, but one of them put out a statement that was basically like, expect the Jays to make moves, but not for the people you think we're going to make moves for. Like we're going for names that are not on people's boards right now. And so it's clear that the Jays were doing a little bit more. Some people call it bottom feeding. Other people do it. Other people call it, a little more. They were scraping other places that other teams generally weren't looking because they were trying to get a better price for players. And I think what a lot of Jays fans are struggling with is that about halfway through the deadline, we had the whole Iglesias and Syndergaard thing dangled in front of our faces. And then we ended up with Zach Pop and Anthony Bass. And while obviously that's something to be, a little bit upset about, if you look at the price that Syndergaard and Iglesias came at individually, one to the Phillies, one to the Braves, obviously, if you look at the price that they came at individually, I don't think the Jays were willing to part with any of that talent. I mean, the day of the trade deadline, they had all of their outfielders in the game. They had Alejandro Kirk behind the plate, and they had Danny Jansen DHing. It was clear that none of those guys were even being shopped. If there was going to be a move made for a higher, level prospect, it was probably going to be Martinez or Moreno. And they didn't think they were ready to part with those guys yet. They didn't think that either they haven't reached their full value, their full trade value yet, or they think that they're a valuable part of this team's future, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I think Pop and Anthony Bass don't carry the same name recognition that a lot of the other guys at the deadline did, but I think they're very quality players. Bass has been an incredible reliever this year, obviously not getting all the attention in the world because he's been playing in Miami, but his return to the Jays is going to mean great things for the pen. He's another guy that's going to be able to give you an inning every couple nights and give you a shutdown inning every couple nights. And Pop is a guy that's got a lot of potential and a fantastic fastball, the local boy, which I know Mario's going to have a little bit to say about.
Can be a fan favorite, that's for sure.
That's for sure. I don't think it's as bad of a deadline as many Jays fans are making it out to be. I just don't think it's the return we expected. And we were warned. I don't know how many people saw the statement. I don't know how widespread that got out, but Shapiro and Atkins weren't planning on spending at this deadline. And I think given what they were willing to part with, they got a pretty great return.
I feel like the furthest thing from that statement was acquiring a versatile second baseman outfielder like Whit Merrifield. I didn't think, again, if you're a fan of the show, my love for Whit Merrifield goes very extensive. We were given that in our player rankings heading into the year, and I had him very high just because I love the skills that he possesses. He didn't really have a great season. He's batting .240 with just, what do I got here? 5 home runs through 84 games. So it's been a pretty ugly stretch of baseball at the plate for him and what he has to offer. It hasn't really been mixing very well. But what I'm really interested to see is we have so many right-handed bats on the Jays roster. why go dig a bigger divot in the right side of the batter's box? I'm just a little confused as to why Whit Merrifield was the piece that they went to go get. I'm happy, but I don't even know if he's going to be playing in Toronto with the political ties that he carries with the vaccine issues, which managerials have been saying it's not going to be an issue. It's going to get all resolved, which means I think they already know something about Whit Merrifield getting the vaccine. So I'm sure that was in place before the trade was ever made. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Evan. And I'm going to swap it to Mateo. What did you make of the Whit Merrifield coming to Toronto? Was it the right move? Like, I mean, pitching was all that this team had to get, and they did get that done. Not the names that everyone wanted to, but it was, again, like you mentioned, Mateo, there's a fair warning that we weren't going to go out and get big name pitching. That's fine. But why are we getting a guy who's playing second base in the outfield? And does it have to do with maybe some injury concerns to some of the players? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. George Springer, who Whit Merrifield could play center field, and George Springer can play very well center field, but not when he's injured. And that might be something that we see come to fruition. But what do you make of the move, Evan? Was it a good move from the Jays? Just what are your thoughts on Whit Merrifield coming to Toronto?
I mean, I was kind of confused because one, I knew he was unvaccinated, so I was like now he can't even play in the home games. And I was like, you have Santiago Espinal at second, so like, are you gonna move like? Then what do you do with Espinal? And like you have like Gurriel Jr. in left field, like where I never really I don't think it made sense to trade for Whit Merrifield if all you're going to use him is like a utility guy. Like it didn't make sense to me to part ways with prospects for a guy that you're not. And he's 33 years old, so it's not like he's got like it's not like he has years ahead of him. If anything, like he's clocks, clock's ticking here. It just didn't make sense. And you talk about like starting pitching. I just saw that like Ross Stripling now went on the injured list, so I mean, if the Blue Jays had known that, I don't get why you wouldn't be more aggressive. And I get that, like the prospects. I mean, you gave up them for Barrios, and you did it with Chapman as well. So you're kind of slim in terms of like acquiring a star level pitcher, but just be stalemate when you're 11 games back of your division. Just it didn't make it doesn't make sense because I don't think the Blue Jays got better, but at the same time, like they kind of needed to because they've been like, I mean, you guys know, like the team's been underperforming to say the least. A lot of these guys, a lot of scouts or not scouts, I'm sorry, like GMs and even just people around the league had the Blue Jays as like a top team in the American League as the favorite to come out of the AL, and some even had them winning the World Series. And to be stalemate, it seemed kind of like a cowardly move. It's like, what are you like? Are you afraid that then if the trades don't work out, like what happens next? Or like, you got to at least like show the fan base that you care, because to trade just for Whit Merrifield when you already have those positions filled and to use them as a utility, just it doesn't make sense. Like it was weird. My dad and I were very confused by the trade.
A lot of people in Toronto were confused. I want to know if you were along that majority, Mateo. What were your thoughts on Merrifield coming to Toronto? Because, I mean, I got to see what Davis is saying here. I don't know where he's going to play, but again, his versatility is what's going to keep him in the lineup, whether it's on the road or at home, however that situation plays out. It's going to be the defense that probably keeps him in the lineup. Why Merrifield? Why did they go that route?
I was one of the few people who wasn't confused, I'll say. I feel like this move made a lot more sense than people give it credit for. It's no secret that George Springer's elbow is about to explode into about 70,000 pieces.
It looks that way.
I don't think he's playing center field or anywhere in the outfield for the rest of the season. If he does, it's not going to be with any kind of regularity. And I think Whit Merrifield is going to move into that sort of everyday center fielder kind of situation, which I think is much needed considering that the natural backup that they've been playing right now is Raimel Tapia, who really hasn't been the greatest defender in center field. The one thing that's keeping Tapia in the lineup right now is the fact that he's got a hot bat and the fact that he's a lefty.
Yep.
And that's sort of been, the thing that the Jays keep coming back to is the fact that every single good hitter in their lineup pretty much is a right-handed bat. And while that's not necessarily the recipe for success is to trot out 9 righties no matter who's on the mound, I feel like John Schneider as a manager cares a little less about that than some other people do. I think it's evident in the lineups that he's been building since he's taken over that his sort of, way of doing things is that I'm going to make sure that I put the best lineup out there, no matter righty lefty, no matter the order that I'm hitting them in, no matter the matchup, because a good hitter is going to hit no matter who he's playing against, especially if you look at the quality of hitters that the Jays have managed to bring in and develop in their system. I think they're confident that those guys can go up righty or lefty, no matter the matchup, and they're going to have just as good odds to hit against either side. And so that kind of negates a guy like Raimel Tapia unless his bat is scorching hot like this, where Whit Merrifield plays much better defense in center field. He's got a much more proven track record. And another thing that I will talk about for Whit Merrifield is something that I like to bring up for a lot of guys who played in bigger parks. If you've been following these podcasts for a while, you remember I said the same thing about Nick Castellanos in Detroit. In Detroit. And Whit Merrifield actually led the league in doubles last year in Kauffman Stadium, which is one of the biggest parks in Major League Baseball. So he's got the power, and he's never really been a huge home run threat. I'm looking at it now. His career high is like 19 home runs. I believe, what's he got right now? He's got 6 home runs. I believe that at the end of the season, if Whit Merrifield plays center field with any regularity, if he gets in the lineup almost every day, I think he'll probably be up at around 25 by the end of the year. I think he's going to catch fire. I think he's going to get scorching hot. And I think Whit Merrifield. And the other thing with Whit Merrifield is that he's going to play. He's going to play. He's going to play day in, day out, no matter where you put him. If you put him at second base, if you put him at short, if you put him in the outfield, he's going to play, provided he gets vaccinated.
Yeah, he's
and I know it's something that the Yankees have talked about, and it's something that's come up in Jay's news a little bit too. And how do you bend the system because you've got to wait 4 months in between shots and he won't be considered fully vaccinated? But there is the opportunity for him to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which, you know, without getting into the science of it, for some reason is considered fully vaccinated after 1 shot, which would allow Benintendi and Merrifield to potentially play in Toronto tomorrow. So I don't think the vaccine will be an issue. I think it's probably something that was worked out during the trade discussions. And I think the move does make a lot of sense when you consider the current landscape of the Jays right now, and the fact that, are you willing to go into the playoffs in a game where every single play matters, where, you know, you might have a ball dying down in between the shortstop and the center field, or you might have a ball in the gap that somebody absolutely needs to get to, and you have to trust Raimel Tapia to make that play and also hit in your lineup every day? I don't know if that's a direction that the Jays wanted to go into. And I know that many teams have been in on Merrifield for a very long time. And for what they gave up for him, I think the value for Merrifield was like, if you were going to trade for him, this was the time to trade for him. So I don't hate the move. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Jays. Would I have liked to see starting pitching ads in addition to a guy like Whit Merrifield? Absolutely. But I'm not mad at the trade at all.
And I mean, you mentioned playoffs and who would you want in those playoff situations? Well, there's been a lot of talk over the year about the Toronto Blue Jays playoff aspirations. If you remember way back in the preseason, they were considered, I think, top 2 or top 3 playoff odds to win the World Series. Do we still feel the same way now after the moves have been made, after the deadline, with everything said and done? This is the roster. This is all you're going to be going with the rest of the way. Do they have the right pieces to get a championship? Mateo and then Evan. Is this the right team?
Shapiro and Atkins got the Cleveland, well, then the Indians, now the Guardians, to the World Series in 2016 by nickel and diming at every chance they got. And they had their star players in Lindor and the other players that surrounded him. But they got to the World Series not because of the big splashes they made. They got to the World Series because of the pieces that they brought in to surround those players. And they were competitive because of the guys like Rajay Davis that they brought in for really budget prices. And I think that's what Shapiro and Atkins are. That's the model that they're sort of following here. And it's no secret that year, 2016, was, you know, a weaker year for baseball. There's definitely much more concentrated talent in the league right now. And there's going to be much more talent in the playoffs that the Jays are going to have to contend with, just with the amount of teams as well. But I seriously do think that the Jays team does have enough to compete. I don't think we've seen them play their best baseball this year. And I think having some regularity now with Whit Merrifield as a guy who answers a lot of questions of what do we do if George Springer's not in the lineup, sort of what do we do if this guy can't play? What do we do if this can't happen? He answers a lot of those questions before they even appear. And I think that's definitely a factor that you need to consider in the playoffs. A guy like Chris Taylor does that. A guy like Ben Zobrist, World Series MVP, does that for these really successful teams. And I think this team was missing that player who you know, was Kevin Biggio up until this point. And I think if you upgrade your utility spot from Kevin Biggio to Whit Merrifield, I think it answers a lot of those what ifs before they even happen.
All right, Evan Davis, what about you? World Series contender still, or what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I don't know. It's kind of hard. Like the Blue Jays are. I mean, they needed pitching, and I don't think like you can have all the offense in the world, but like if you can't pitch, you can't win. And I mean, right now the Blue Jays they're 12th in the league in team ERA, 3.86. I mean, that would put them in the bottom echelon. It would put them right below the Minnesota Twins in terms of teams that are in the postseason.
But
That are
remember,
like in the postseason race.
you're only rolling out 4 pitchers in the playoffs, right? Manoah, Gosman,
I,
Barrios, and Stripling if he's healthy. That's all you
I
need.
know, but here's the like, it just that's great, but it's like, what Barrios am I getting what
That's
Barrios
fair.
am I
That's fair.
getting each
Yep.
game? And same with Gosman. Like Gosman's had some rancid starts. I mean, last night was incredible, 10 strikeouts through 8 innings. But the issue is that like Barrios has been so up and down. Like you can't bet on the Blue Jays when Jose Barrios is on the mound because he's either going to give up 6 runs in 3 innings and throw 90 pitches, or he's going to be what you traded Austin Martin for and then sign for like 30 million a year. So I don't know. I think it's tough. I mean, I think if they played the Yankees, maybe they get a game in the division series, or like I don't know. It's just hard. I don't think they would really. I mean, they might be competitive. It's August, so they still have time. But I mean, not getting a Montas or Castillo. I had Castillo going to the Blue Jays, and to not get one of those guys, I feel like kind of shot them with Ryu out and just the up and down pitching of. And maybe it's because the pitching coach got that DUI at the beginning of the year, and that just maybe he's just been
No,
drunk the entire
I don't
year.
think there was any saving Yusei Kikuchi, regardless of the DUI. I think, yeah, they
No,
did have a lot of questions to answer there. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to just end, the inconsistency of the starting pitching is what just concerns me about it. But we've seen guys turn up when the calendar turns to October. Jock Peterson, they call him Jocktober. I mean, who knows with Barrios? And we've seen Gosman last year in the NLDS. He was really, really good. He showed up when the lights were brightest for the Giants last year. So who knows? Like maybe something happens. But as of right now, this moment, I don't see them making a ton of noise in the playoffs.
Beauty about playoffs, man, is that anything can happen. We've seen great
Mhm.
teams get absolutely
Yeah,
plummeted in the first round. We've seen really ugly and mediocre teams find some magic and go the lengths and sometimes win a championship. So it's not always about what's done at the deadline. Of course, the pieces matter. Of course, they matter, but they're not the be all end all. Is kind of what we're trying to say.
As long as you make it, you got a shot.
There
As
you
long
go.
as you make it,
Like
you
the
got
Brewer
it.
said, just get a bite of the apple.
There you go.
Yeah.
And who knows
I
how
just
hungry you're
read
going to
that
be.
tweet. That was the
It's
weirdest.
crazy, right?
It's a
I've
weird
never
one.
seen anything like, I've never seen a team apologize after a trade before.
It's like when you don't get your kid a candy bar
Yeah.
after school and you're like, you know what, Jimmy? I'm sorry, but we have food at home.
Oh, but again,
It's
all right, this is probably going to be the title of the show, Apples. So I
Yeah.
hope you got that one down. But that does it for the show, guys. That's all we got. Those are the big teams that made big splashes at the deadline, and we got this one in just under an hour. So quite happy with the look out there. But for the guys at home, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate the support as always. I know it's been a while since we released an episode. Summer's gotten us all busy, all tied up in knots, but it's starting to slow down a little bit. We're going to get a lot more episodes out in the weeks and months to come. But thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Russo, Evan Davis, and Mateo Ruiz right below me. I wish you guys all the best. Take care and enjoy the baseball because it's getting that much better. It's going to be a fun ride to the end. Take care, everybody, and have a great rest of your night. Cheers.
Take it easy.